And we welcome you to the playoffs here on OSN. Lever Sage, Tanner Ryle with you. The Ottawa Senators and the Carolina Hurricanes get going in game one of their Eastern Conference quarterfinal in 1 hour from now at 3 o'clock. Tanner, a couple of months ago, never, ever thought that we'd be sitting here on an April weekend talking about game one of the playoffs, but here we are. What a run it's been for the Ottawa Senators, and maybe, just maybe, a longer run here in the playoffs. How are you?
Doing pretty good, Lee. Yeah, there's nothing like playoff hockey. Best time of the year, and you could really start to feel it in the city. I was out a little bit today. I saw a whole lot of Sens car flags flapping in the wind. We were down at Lansdowne, the market there, and a lot of people wearing their jerseys. Quite a bit of charge, too, because the Charge are getting ready to, I believe, drop the puck in a matter of minutes here against the New York Sirens. But a lot of Sens jerseys. The city's fired up. I know the Red Zone is probably going to be pumping today outside of the Canadian Tire Center. Sens miles are ready to go. And like you said, yeah, I never thought we'd be here when we started this show in mid-January when Levi Merilainen was backing this team up, and they were in the basement of the Eastern Conference, and we said they would have to go on a run, and they did just that. And here we are, game one against the Carolina Hurricanes.
Since January the 25th, the Ottawa Senators are 21-6-4. The reason why they're able to get into the playoffs, only the Dallas Stars, who played one less game than them, had an almost exact 21-6-3 record to Ottawa's 21-6-4. But over those 46 games, the best team in the NHL. And it got them into the second wild card against the top-ranked Carolina Hurricanes. No prize for Carolina, I'll tell you that, with Ottawa playing as well as they are. We welcome your comments in the chat and anything that you want to add to the program, as Ethan is already here and says Lee was polishing his golf clubs back in January. Ethan, what you don't know about me is every month I polish my golf clubs because I love to golf. But for the Sens and the Canes, the last thing in the world that they are thinking about. So in an hour, they drop the puck in game number one. This game number one is going to be a very, very important game. They always say that it is, but the numbers back it up. When you look at almost a 68% over the course of the last 25 years, game one winners win the series, and 75% last year, 6 of 8 teams in round one who won game one went on to win the series. So already, Tanner, I think a little bit of an interesting lineup note for the Carolina Hurricanes. It will not be Brandon Bussey in goal.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise there. And I've got a preview article that I posted today breaking down this series, and a little bit of that focused on goaltending, because I do think that is going to be the X factor that decides who comes out between these two teams. And it's a big question mark for both of them. Now, from the Senator side, we know what this season has been like for Linus Ullmark. Really struggled early on in the year, was near the bottom or at the bottom for pretty much every statistical category. It wasn't very good. And meanwhile, Brandon Bussey out there was putting up numbers better than Andrew Hammond. I believe he's the fastest goalie in NHL history to 20 wins. Mm-hmm. And he started off as a waiver pickup from the Florida Panthers as the third string guy in Carolina before Kochetkov went down with an injury, and then put on a 23-3-1 record, earning himself a nice little contract extension. But from there, it really started to fall off for Brandon Bussey. And he actually finished the year with an .865 save percentage.
Wow.
Which is not very good. So I'm not overly surprised to see the Canes going to Freddie Anderson here. He finished the year with an .874, but I think the big part of why they're going to Anderson would be that he has 85 games in his career of playoff experience.
We talked about that last week, and I was like, he must have played a lot of games. Looked it up and was like, 85. That's
That's a lot.
That's crazy for the kind of lack of success that people talk about as a big time goalie. To play 85 games in the playoffs, and it'll be 86 after today. So you're right, though. Carolina's a really interesting, and I loved your article on thisisosn.com breaking down the series, because what you got into and what Carolina's deal is I mean, they're first in the league in Corsi. They got the puck all the time. And we've kind of seen that a little bit with Ottawa as well, that over the last couple of months, they've had the puck a lot. They don't give up a lot of shots. And even in games where they win 5-2, Linus Ullmark comes out, and it's not like he played horribly, but you look and you're like, it's like an 870 save percentage because he just doesn't get that many shots. So you got to stop the ones that come. And for Brandon Bussey, he did that early. He's not doing it now. And they're going to go to the veteran. But they got lots of options, as you point out.
Yeah, I think there's probably a chance we might see 2 or 3 goalies in this series, depending on how things go for the Carolina Hurricanes. Because I still don't think Bussey's a terrible option for them. And then you've got Peter Kochetkov, who I believe was their starter in the playoffs last year, coming back from what was supposed to be a season-ending injury. He wasn't able to get into any NHL games. He almost played their last one, but there was a very weird roster error that prevented him from being allowed to play. Not really sure what happened there. But I think obviously Carolina would hope probably just to play 1 goalie. But I don't think there's an outside chance that maybe we do see 2 or 3 of those guys get into the crease. Whereas here in Ottawa, I think if it gets past Linus Ullmark at all, the Sens are in serious trouble, because he's not going to be sitting unless he's injured. There's no way they can go to James Reimer or Levi Merrilainen, who's up with the team right now as well.
Yeah, they have no options. And that's a little bit of the scary part, is that sometimes, we talk about like players. If a player's not going very well in a game, he gets sat down a little bit. Like in the third period, teams, especially in big games, they go to their top couple lines. They go to their top 4D. Other guys don't get a chance to play as much. And sometimes as coaches, you got to just find out who's going and who's not. But with goalies, we don't really see that. But the Carolina Hurricanes have lots of options. Ottawa's got no options. So that to me already is one of the absolute biggest concerns or things to watch in the series, is that it's Linus Ullmark or bust. There is nothing behind him to be able to put in to go, we can still win a big playoff game against a number 1 seed. We're going to be fine. In fact, James Reimer played against the Carolina Hurricanes on the last game before January 25th, and he got shelled. I believe you were at the game. You left early, and it was like no contest. Carolina kind of blew him out. And that's actually the game that they turned everything around. But this team has no option to go to anybody else, where Carolina does. So much focus on Linus Ullmark in this series. There has to.
I think it's going to depend what version of him that we get, because I mentioned in my article, but after the Olympic break, Linus Ullmark went 12-4-3 with a .902 save percentage and a .251 goals against average. If they had those numbers all season, the Senators would be comfortably in a division spot in this playoffs. So are we going to see that Ullmark, or are we going to see the Ullmark that frankly hasn't really been a playoff performer throughout his entire career, whether it's last year with the Senators or other years with the Boston Bruins? In his career, he has a 5-10-0 playoff record with a combined .885 save percentage and a 3.28 goals against average. That's not going to cut it.
No.
In this series. Linus Ullmark needs to be better than whoever Carolina has in the net. But I'm very, very intrigued how this is going to play out, because you look at these teams, like stylistically, they're so similar. I mentioned in my article, Carolina just feels like a more polished, more experienced, well-rounded Ottawa Senators team. They play that trap style of defense. I think we're going to see a lot in the neutral zone, and I'm curious to see if the Senators try to beat them at their own game, or maybe if they pull some tricks out of teams that have gotten the better of the Carolina Hurricanes over the last couple of years. I would be shocked if they aren't looking at the Florida Panthers a lot to do that.
They outshot Carolina in every game that they played against them this year, and that's fascinating to me. The one game Carolina got up really early, they got up big, and that you don't really factor that one in. But the other ones, they beat Carolina down the stretch. Taylor Hall saying that this is a playoff team, this is a very good team, whether they get in or not. And you could see they took it to the Hurricanes, and you just don't see that very often. The other game, they deserved to win, and it was James Reimer in net, and he just let in a couple of bad goals, and all of a sudden now you're behind in a game that you shouldn't be. But they have played Carolina very, very well. But I totally agree with you that this is one of those series that if you are able to not get out of your game, like I worry a lot, Tanner, about the Senators' ability to not get frustrated. And that sounds a little bit crazy that they're the 8th seed and you would think the 8th seed will try and trap the 1 seed and make them frustrated. I completely think it's the other way around. This is one of those series that Ottawa has been good in transition. They've been very patient over the last couple of months, knowing who they are. But can they do it when at times Carolina can overwhelm you? Can they stay patient? Can they get a big save? Can they not worry that they're down 1-0 and they turn around and make it 2 or 3-0 and they're not patient at those times? That to me is absolutely one of the keys of this series.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think it's going to be just fascinating to see what kind of game Ottawa has. I think the biggest thing is to try not to have what happened last year against the Maple Leafs happen in game 1, where they got just frankly overwhelmed by the stage that they were on and the situation, taking a lot of dumb penalties and not playing their game. But I think this team learned their lesson last year and has been playing a much more structured game for a long time now. But Carolina is no easy building to play in. I actually saw some recent player polls that had the Lenovo Center ranked number 1 as the hardest rink to play in the NHL. And we know what that crowd's going to be like for the Canes.
Why do you think that is? Like, what is it about that rink specifically?
To me, I wonder if it's more about the team and just like the suffocating style that they play. And it does get pretty loud in there. The crowd is very much behind their team. Other than that, I'm not sure what I would draw from it as much, but just looking at this roster too, the Carolina Hurricanes are icing. It's so deep.
Right.
And there's one player in particular, Nikolai Ehlers, who I highlighted a little bit in the blog, had a career high year this year.
Yep.
With him and Drake Batherson putting up 71 points. I kind of compared them there. He's playing on their 3rd line right now.
Yeah, and he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, I think a lot of Sens fans were circling him in the offseason last year as someone they'd like to see alongside Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk.
So you did break down some matchups talking about like Tim Stützle, Seth Jarvis was the first one. Both drafted in 2020. It seems to me like Tim Stützle is the best skilled game breaker in this series. That doesn't mean he's the best player in the series. It just means he's got the ability, kind of more than anybody else, to do something at any one time that can change a game. Does Seth Jarvis have that in it? We saw him go to the Olympics. He's a very underrated player that played for the Carolina Hurricanes in Canada, where you kind of go, oh yeah, like I look at his numbers and I see some different things, but when you watch this guy play, man, is he a very, very good player. So that's an interesting first matchup to look at. Like, can Tim Stützle not get frustrated? You know that people are going to go after him. You know that he'll be targeted. He likes to flop around a little bit. You hope that he doesn't start doing that a bunch of times early, because he needs to draw some calls for this team. That's an interesting matchup, Seth Jarvis and Tim Stützle.
Yeah, and each of them had exactly 3 goals and 1 assist in the 4 games that these two, or in the 3 games that these two played each other in the regular season. So yeah, very interesting there. I think Jarvis is very explosive, and they're going to have to watch out for him for sure.
One of the
As I mentioned.
Go ahead.
As I mentioned, the other one there, Ehlers and Batherson, both 71 career high points this year. I think both of them have been criticized a little bit for playoff performances.
Mhm.
And now Batherson, obviously, it's a much, much smaller sample size than Nikolai Ehlers and the Winnipeg Jets. But those are two guys that I think I'm going to be watching a lot.
Your next matchup was one that I was going to bring up anyway, so I'm glad that you mentioned it in your article. Maybe two of the best defensive players in the game. I know that Shane Pinto, we know in Ottawa, is a very, very good defensive player and probably deserves a little bit more love in that Selke conversation. But Sebastian Aho is like one of the very best in the NHL. And because of the success of the Hurricanes over the last 7 or 8 years, his name right up there. But this is a fascinating matchup to me. Like, can Shane Pinto be as good or even better than Sebastian Aho in this series? What two unbelievable defensive players, Tanner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think Aho is also underrated offensively as well. I was just looking at some of his numbers last night. Like, he puts up Tim Stützle numbers. Like, he's an 80-point player. He's going to be very dangerous in this series. And I think Travis Green would probably like to get Shane Pinto's line out there against Aho and Svechnikov and Jarvis, which is the Carolina Hurricanes top line. I think usually we don't go through lines, but I think in a playoff series, maybe it's something we should spend a little bit of time on, because that's a dangerous first line when I look at the Carolina Hurricanes and how they're expected to line up today. But if you want to stick to the matchups there, I also mentioned Jacob Slavin and Jake Sanderson.
Again, Slavin, a little bit underrated for a guy that is as good as he is, but Jake Sanderson's getting right there to be like a top 5 guy in the league. Like,
right.
If he is back and healthy, and hopefully the last week for him has been a real good week to just, he's coming back from injury, and yes, he played, and everyone thinks that, just because he went in and played 21, 22 minutes, that this guy is completely healthy. That week for Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot too, but man, I can't even describe to you for them what that would mean after getting back in, and then the rush of games that they had, for them to have a week off to get healthy and prepare. So if Jake Sanderson isn't one of the best players in this series, Ottawa's not winning. It's just that simple to me. They have to, and that doesn't mean offense. That doesn't mean that he's got to lead the team in points. That means when he's out there, he's got to get the puck out of his own zone. He's one of the best in the league at doing so. Can't make mistakes in his own end, and make sure that he is kind of the leader of the team up the ice, getting into a better position and getting out of their own end, and then letting skill take over after that. If he can do that, and I'll be watching very closely early with the onslaught that you expect from Carolina in that first period this afternoon. If Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot can be able to do that successfully, man, Ottawa's got a really, really good chance. This is an incredible matchup too, between two really, really good defensemen. Jake Sanderson is better. He's got to be better though for Ottawa to win this series. I know you talked about the coaching staff as well. Interesting matchup with Rod Brind'Amour and Travis Green.
Yeah, absolutely. Ottawa-born Rod Brind'Amour, by the way.
Yep.
Very interesting there. Yeah. He's taken this team to multiple conference finals. He's got a Jack Adams and the full faith of Carolina, it seems, to bring them to a Stanley Cup. Hasn't been able to yet. And Carolina's in complete cup or bust mode this year. Whereas Travis Green has completely changed the identity of the Senators, turned them around from where they were 2 seasons ago. We saw it last year, but even more so this year. The entire team has bought into the game style that Green has them playing. And I think a lot of it is derived from the Carolina Hurricanes. I believe Brady Tkachuk directly mentioned them during his Wingman podcast. So I'm really intrigued, because I think it's going to be a bit of a chess matchup between these two coaches.
Ethan, talking about the seats in Carolina is a good point, because the way their seats are laid out, 2/3 of the seats are on the 100 level. So it can be very loud, close to the ice. And he says Sanderson also was excellent at the Olympics.
So was Jake Slavin.
Yeah, I know. So for all of these teams, right, it's been a very, very long year for all the guys that went to the Olympics. And for Jake Sanderson, he was hurt and he missed some time, and then he came back. It was like, well, we need you to play 25 minutes when you get back. Like, we're not going to ease you into the lineup. So many good individual matchups, and that's what I love about playoffs. You mentioned the captain, and the first real mention of the captain was about his podcast. I don't disagree that he hasn't really been worthy of a lot of talk. Can Brady Tkachuk be that playoff difference maker? Everyone has always said it's beast mode for Brady Tkachuk. When he gets to the playoffs, he is going to be that guy. Just wait until you see Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think we were looking for a little bit more of that out of him last year against Toronto. He was over a point a game, and that's going to be huge. But I think especially the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't know that they would have an answer for a guy like Brady Tkachuk.
I agree.
And there's another guy I'm looking at also lower in the Ottawa Senators lineup that I don't think they'd have an answer to as well, and that'd be Nick Cousins. If Nick Cousins can get out there and just be an asshole but not get called for penalties, I think that could be a huge factor in the series for the Senators.
Yeah, I mean, that's their game plan to frustrate any team, right? And Carolina, everything I've heard this week since the matchup was announced, that from them, how important discipline is, how important it is to stay on the course. They know Ottawa's a tough team, and they're talking about being disciplined, not taking penalties. For the Carolina Hurricanes, they have, since March 1st, they're hitting at like 34%. This is a very, very good power play. So, as you mentioned, can Cousins play his game without sitting in the box? He crosses the line sometimes. And there are games where you watch Nick Cousins, he's like, he doesn't know where the line is, and he takes at least one or two penalties that you're like, what are you doing?
Yep, that's going to be huge. And I think the PK also is going to be a big part of this series. Bottom of the league earlier in the year, and then they make that change to Mike Yeo, and they finish out the year 6th overall in the NHL.
That's wild. They were so bad. Again, since March 1st, I just looked at some of the numbers. 82.8%, a couple of percentage points higher than Carolina in that. But they've been good, and one of the things that they do, right, that will become, it's like you start to go to all of these different players and all of these different things that can happen. And another one is that Ottawa wins a lot of faceoffs. Claude Giroux wins a lot of faceoffs.
Yep. Number 1 in the league this year. Carolina sitting around 16th. So very much middle of the pack. Like you mentioned, Giroux, I think Stützle has really elevated that part of his game this year. Pinto as well. And I mean, that's the advantage of having Claude Giroux there at practice to take some draws up against. He's going to help you get better.
And for this team, doesn't seem like a lot when you say that they win 5% more of the draws than Carolina. But man, 5% can add up real quick, especially because we mentioned it earlier, and we welcome people in that are watching. If you want to get in on the chat, your thoughts on the series, predictions, what do you think are some of the keys?
Just to add, I think even the face-off thing was a bit of a story last year because it seemed like John Tavares was really able to counter Claude Giroux. Not sure who you'd be looking at on Carolina for that. Maybe it's Sebastian Aho. Maybe it's Jordan Stahl, another grizzled vet there, but it's going to be a big story in the series.
But when you talk about like Corsi and puck possession, you mentioned it in your article. The Ottawa Senators were 5th in the league by the end of the year in that category, right? With a 52.85.
Yes.
Corsi. They are 7 percentage points behind Carolina, who is sitting at just a very slight tad under 60%. Like number 1 in the league, like by a lot. This team has the puck all the time. So when you are winning 5% more of the faceoffs over the course of the entire year, if you can continue to be the team that wins faceoffs in the series, it seems like a little thing, but when you're playing a team that has the puck all of the time, you better start with the puck more than they do. And Ottawa's been really good in this category too. When they get the puck, they just don't give it up.
I mean, how many times this season did we see that timer coming up on the scoreboard where the Sens opponent hasn't had a shot in 12, 13 minutes? I don't think that's going to happen in this series.
No, I mean, Carolina, they have the puck a lot and we've talked about it, they shuffle the puck. They don't even look for the great scoring opportunities and make that extra pass. They're always funneling the puck to the net. Always. But 1 versus 5th in Corsi, like, again, this is another discussion, like not necessarily on a pregame show for game number 1. But Carolina got the short end of the stick finishing first. And that's not a homer thing. That is, we talked about, since January 25th, Ottawa's been the best team in the league. So when you start looking at the numbers, that the way Ottawa has controlled possession of the puck, the way that they have improved their penalty kill insanely. Their save percentage was down in the 860s. It's back up to 893. Like, that doesn't seem like a lot. It's a ton. So Carolina, absolutely the short end of the stick here when it comes to an 8 seed that is way better than an 8 seed. But thanks, Gary.
I think you also, you just look at the conference standings. I mean, the Senators are actually the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. They're pretty significantly above the 7th seed there in the Pittsburgh Penguins and the 8th seed in the Philadelphia Flyers. I think if you put a little truth serum into Rod Brindamore, you probably play one of those teams over the Senators.
Oh, 1,000,000%. How could they not? Like, again, I'm going to go back to the, like, where are the league standings? I think Ottawa is in the top 10 in the league. Like, as far as the standings are concerned.
Yep. They finished 9th in the league.
They're 9th in the NHL and 8th in their conference.
It's crazy. There are 3 teams in the Western Conference in the top 10 in the league.
Yeah. Like, they're 9th. That's not an advantage for a team who finishes first. So this is not, and the point I'm trying to make here is this is not Rod Brindamore saying a whole bunch of fluffy things about Ottawa so he doesn't stir the pot. This is like, holy crap, we're facing a really, really good hockey team. It doesn't mean Ottawa's going to beat them. It just means this is no 1-8. Oh, Ottawa barely got in. They only had a couple points more than they did last year. They're just kind of the same team. They're not. This team, maybe this is a bit of a bad example, but that team in St. Louis in 2019 when they won the cup, everyone goes back to, like, they were dead last in the conference. They were only 7 points out of a playoff spot, but they were dead last in the conference. But from January on, they were the best team in the NHL. And they just were the entire time until they won the cup.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Ottawa's going to go on and win the cup. I'm just saying you get these teams that start playing more than just a week or two, that are playing really, really well down the stretch. This is a huge hill for the Carolina Hurricanes to climb.
I think if there's one other team you could maybe consider as well, it'd be the 2023 Florida Panthers, who squeaked in on that 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and went all the way to the Stanley Cup final where they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights.
That's right.
Now, the big concern there would, I think, just be that Ottawa's been playing this style for a long time, and that can really take a lot of energy and take your toll on some of the players. We know they're banged up coming into this series. Thomas Chabot and Jake Sanderson are not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So are they able to sustain that type of game to go on a deep run here and even get past the Carolina Hurricanes? Because that's going to be no easy test. I'm just looking at this lineup here, and they're going to have their hands full tonight.
Getting away a little bit. We'll get back to it as we get close to game time. We're about half an hour away from the drop of the puck in Carolina for game 1. Thanks for being with us here on the pregame show on OSN, game one of the playoffs. It just feels a little bit different to be able to say that.
I can't wait. 3 big games today.
Yeah. If you go, well, and that's kind of where I was going. If you go to thisisosn.com, still a chance to get into our bracket challenge. And I made my picks, Tanner. I made my picks.
As did I.
I'm eager to hear, because I don't think we can see each other's picks yet.
I'm just pulling it up right now. I don't believe we'll be able to until actually things close.
Right. So, but I'm curious. You're hosting the show. Who'd you pick? Who is your Stanley Cup final?
My Stanley Cup final is the Edmonton Oilers against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Okay. And your Stanley Cup champion?
The Edmonton Oilers.
Well, you must have watched again, because you did a great job at hosting the OSN playoff draft last night.
Yeah. Shout out to anybody that was there. A little late at night, but I think it was very fun. And if you missed it, you can still go back and watch it now.
It's all there. So you probably went back this morning and got up and watched it again and then saw like, holy crap, Lee is taking all these Edmonton Oilers. And yeah, you know what? I really think he's probably right again. I also have the Edmonton Oilers winning the Stanley Cup this year.
It'd just be so much fun to see, wouldn't it?
Well, look, I think you're going to have one of the most motivated, pissed off players in the history of the game. To be like, I think Connor McDavid is so tired of people saying that he's the best, but he can't win, and he lost in overtime in the gold medal game. And yeah, they won the Four Nations, but the Four Nations wasn't much. And Game 7 Stanley Cup final twice in a row, can't get it done. I just think he is going to be at some superhuman level. I have the Buffalo Sabres in the Stanley Cup final. And that is only like, look, the first round they say is the best round to sit and watch. We got 3 games today. We'll go over them in a second. And it's just hockey. But the first round, they always say is the most difficult round to get out of. Because to get going and to, just because you were good in the regular season, you have to get to that new level. And sometimes that's not easy to do in the first or second game of the first round, especially as a veteran team. You almost need something to happen to you to wake you up to go, like, we're going to be out if we don't fix this. And sometimes you don't get there. Sometimes you never get the engine running. But if you get the engine running, the veteran teams can be very dangerous. I think Carolina is one of those teams. I think the Buffalo Sabres are another one of those teams. Not a ton of experience, as Ethan points out, a massive factor. And I don't disagree. Like, Buffalo could be out in the first round against Boston. I truly believe that. But they're one of those teams for me. If they get going, there's a massive amount of skill. And the city of Buffalo, we know what it's like with the Bills. We know, like, this Sabres crowd has been begging. They beat one of their big rivals in the Boston Bruins, and who knows who they get in the next round. It just feels like that's a train that could really start to be difficult to stop if they get going. But that's just my opinion. Spelled who's wrong. Nice, Ben. But Ben says, whose house? Sen's house. Okay. Ben's fired up. By the way, Ethan's pick for the Stanley Cup, Colorado Avalanche, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, Colorado's going to be very difficult to beat too. No question about that.
Very much. Yeah.
I know this is a pregame show. I get it. I'm just going to update people. Raptors playing game 1 of their playoff series against Cleveland, down 13 early third quarter. I love the Raptors. I was there. Was it not game 1, but like game 2 ever, back when they started in Toronto. and I just care about them very much. Ben says Minnesota, Tampa. It's an interesting one. Love, like the Wild are one of those teams where, they would be, to me, they might have the hardest route to get to where Ben thinks that they're going to get. They would have to beat Dallas. Then they're probably, and we don't know this, but probably have to beat Colorado in the second round. And then if they do that, I think they get Edmonton in the third round. If they beat all of those teams, they're going to be a very, very well-deserving Stanley Cup finalist. I know the West hasn't been great this year, but show me a harder path to get to the Stanley Cup than the one that Dallas or Minnesota will have to take.
Yeah.
I just don't know what that is. Eric is in, and he says the Avalanche and the Flyers. He is he took Owen Tippett last night in the draft, and people are like, what? But he's big on the Flyers, which, again, they're another one of those teams that, depending on which kind of date you go back to, they're one of those teams that's been top 5 in the NHL in the last 2 months. Dan Vladar was getting MVP talk about how good he has been. So,
should we rapid fire our picks for the first round here before we snap it back to the Sens and Canes?
Yeah, I do want to talk about like the games on today and tomorrow, and then games number 1, and kind of set all of that up. But yeah, we can go through our picks. Ben says Oilers reality check from Arjun's Duckies. Yeah, like, look, Ben, are you picking Anaheim in that series? And like, are we betting on that? Because if we are, then no problem. If you got $20 that says the Ducks are going to beat the Oilers, this is where, and I love Ben's like he'll say something and I'll give him a little like 1-2. You can take it. People say a lot of things like this until there's, money or something else on the line that actually matters. It's great to have an opinion. Oh, I think the Kings are going to beat, they're my upset special. And like, if they lose, no one ever remembers it. And then if they win, you're like, oh, look at me, I picked the Kings. Well, okay, put $50 on the Kings to beat the Avalanche. Then come back to me and tell me how great your picks were. Because I don't think the Anaheim Ducks are going to beat the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe Ben does. But put up something. Show me that you believe in the Ducks or in Arjun's Anaheim Ducks. Show me. Love it.
There you go. Well, that's a good place to start. I think we both have the Edmonton Oilers in that matchup.
Yes.
Against the Ducks. Snapping it over, other side of the Pacific, Golden Knights Mammoth. I like it. I like an upset here.
Do you? You like Utah?
I've got Utah on my bracket.
Yep.
You as well?
No. I did pick Vegas, but I'm really sketchy on it. Like I do not feel great about Vegas. They did turn things around 7-0-1, I believe, under Torts until the end. They completely changed everything that they are and were, but can they continue to do that against, teams? They struggled all year long against teams that were better than them all year. They went a stretch from like 3.5 months where they beat 2 teams that were in the playoffs. And one of them at that point was Detroit, who fell out of the playoffs.
Right.
So this team had a very difficult time. Now, huge coaching change. I think their goaltending's a little bit better. I'm shaky on them, but I do think they have enough. Like Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel are better than anybody that Utah has. And that when I get into series like this, yes, Utah plays a real good team game. I like them. Again, I'm very shaky on this pick, but sometimes I come down to who the better players are. And I think Vegas has 2 or 3 guys that Utah simply does not have. So 51-49, I'm going Vegas.
Yeah, it's very close for me as well. I like the upset here. Decided to go with the fun pick and go with Utah. Mm-hmm. It'd be fun to get them first of all, just into the playoffs and see them win around here. Sticking to the West, we got the Stars and the Wild. To me, this is the hardest one to predict.
I have no idea. Like I picked. Who did I pick in my? I think I picked Minnesota, but I don't even remember it because it was just one of those like I think whoever is going to probably lose to Colorado. It's great series. I think the Wild are one of those teams because Bill Guerin has made the big splash that everyone is like, oh, I got the Wild. I got the Wild. Like Ben's got them in the finals. Ethan's in. You took Minnesota, correct?
I did not. I've got the Dallas Stars.
Okay.
They've been there before, and I really like their forward depth, especially down the middle. I think that's still an area that Minnesota really needs to address. And yeah, I've got Dallas. I think it's going to go 7. It's going to be a very hard hitting series, but Dallas was my cut pick actually last year. I think they're only going to win one round this year, but I've got them in this matchup. Not sure that we even need to talk about the Kings and the Avalanche because I don't think anybody has the Los Angeles Kings.
If you do, I'd love to know why. That would be my like. What is it about the LA Kings that you think after 22 regulation victories, 22 in 82 games, that this team is going to beat the Colorado Avalanche 4 times in 7 games? I just there's nothing to me here to say. Like, if somebody's got an argument, I'm open to hear it, but I don't have one.
Yeah. Ethan's right. I am a bit of a Dallas guy. I like Minnesota, but I'm a Dallas guy. I've been there before. It's a beautiful city. I love the jerseys they're rocking in the playoffs this year. So elite that they're wearing their thirds. I think that should be their new home jersey.
So you also told us that you love the Minnesota third jersey. Like the North
I do, yeah. The North Star color with the yellow, the white, the green.
I love that jersey too.
Wouldn't that be a sick matchup if both teams wore their thirds?
Come on.
I would love that. That may be the best jersey matchup in the league.
Can we convert you, if you're a Dallas guy, to just be a whole Dallas all sports?
I've been to AT&T Stadium, so potentially.
I haven't. That's not right.
I saw Triple H and Roman Reigns there, Lee. Get excited. The best WrestleMania main events of all time.
Speaking of which, I will merge the worlds. Yesterday, CeeDee Lamb met The Undertaker. CeeDee Lamb, I have to tell you who CeeDee Lamb is, not the rest of, probably Ethan too. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best receivers in the NFL who plays for the Dallas Cowboys. And he met The Undertaker yesterday, and he fan flipped out. Did the full, oh my God, I can't believe I just met The Undertaker. He was so pumped about it. Yep. Z Gibbons says Tanner Riles, a Cowboys fan, confirmed. Okay. Let's go. Ben, back to the Wild for a second. It's had the Wild in the finals 3 years in a row. They're due. Worst sports argument in the history of arguments, saying that any team in any spot is due. Things do not work that way. They do not, Ben. Says, I think Colorado gets caught with their foot off the gas after a quick series against LA.
I think that's a big story to watch, either whether it's Minnesota or Dallas that goes through. Because if one of those teams beats the other, they're going to feel pretty good about themselves. Yeah, and we saw what Dallas did to Colorado last year, where Mikko Rantanen just scored that hat trick and willed them past Colorado. But now over to the East. First matchup there. I think we both have the same team. You mentioned the Sabres you have in the final. I've got Buffalo as well over Boston. Mm-hmm. Curious a little bit about the playoff experience, but when I just look at Boston's roster, I don't see them getting past the first round. I think the only way they do is if Jeremy Swayman plays out of his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, Boston's been really good. Morgan Geeky's been really streaky this year. If he gets hot, the Buffalo Sabres could be in trouble because when he gets hot, he just scores in bunches. I know streaky guys do, but for him this year, it was 17 goals in 18 games. And then, 14 games, never scored. And then came back and did it again. He would go on these huge runs. He's the X factor for me if Boston has a chance, but I just think there's too much in Buffalo, and I don't think it'll be easy. I think this one could actually go the distance, but I think Buffalo does survive it, and that's where I think they kind of get the train going.
Lightning Canadiens. This is going to be a fun one. I think it's going to go the distance as well. And to me, it's the skill against the playoff experience and grit.
Yeah.
And I'm going with the experience. I mentioned Tampa Bay's my cup finalist here. So I do have them over the Montreal Canadiens. I just think they might be able to bully them a little bit like the Washington Capitals did last season.
I understand, and I think so as well, but this couldn't be a worse matchup for Tampa with the way that Montreal plays. For me, as a person who does not care about the Montreal Canadiens, Montreal, Tampa, Minnesota, Dallas are the two series I'm going to kick back, put my feet up, and go, this is great.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Philly, Pittsburgh too, but yeah, this one could go either way. I believe I took Tampa. I can't get back into my picks now, Tanner. Once I've put them in, I was like, I don't know how to see them again. But I don't have either one of those teams kind of coming out at the end. So it was a 50-50 split for me as well.
Very fair. And then you mentioned it there before we get back to the Senators and Hurricanes, the Penguins and the Flyers.
Yeah, I like Philly in this series. I think they've been the better team over the last couple of months. I think not a lot of people have been talking about them. A couple weeks before the end of the regular season, I kept telling people, like, watch Philly. They're not on people's radar right now, but they're coming, and they got all the way up into the third spot in the Metro. These two teams hate each other, and I still feel like Pittsburgh's overachieved this year. I know Ethan's got Sidney Crosby like first overall in every pool he's ever done, so good for him. But I don't see it. I really don't. I think Philadelphia is gonna outlast them here and move on.
I have the Flyers as well, but I could totally see Sidney Crosby just willing his team to one more playoff victory. Could be his last chance in his career. But in the end, I did go with Philly. Feel pretty good about Porter Martone, picking him up in the draft late yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So excited for that one, which brings us back to the Sens and the Hurricanes. Puck drop in 12 minutes here.
Okay. Well, we better start talking about them. Look, this is I've been saying all show, this is a terrible matchup for the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, to get Ottawa in the first round in a 1-8 they do not deserve that for how well they've played with 113 points on the year. Two teams that are going to want to have the puck all the time. I have the Carolina Hurricanes winning in 7 games. It's kind of that one game that I think, if they start to overwhelm, they get a goal or two on Linus Ullmark. I just don't know how Ottawa battles back. But look, it's a tough series. I think it's very, very even. And to me, it's one of those. I don't know that a lot of people really know how this one is going to go. The betting odds are like, yes, Carolina's a favorite, but they're not a massive favorite in the series like a 1-8 should be. And that's because people know how good Ottawa's been. I mean, if Linus Ullmark's the best player in the series, Ottawa can win. Absolutely, they can win. This is not one of those they are fighting uphill the entire way. I don't believe they are. It's just I still don't have the full confidence in a 2-2 game in Game 7 that Linus Ullmark's going to make all the saves that you need him to make to win a hockey game when your team doesn't have the puck as much as they usually do.
I've got the Sens in 7.
Okay.
I think they're going to be able to get past the Canes. It's going to be a very close series, but I think they're going to be able to channel a bit of that Florida Panthers style of game that I think is Carolina's biggest vulnerability. And it's going to be a close one. Don't get me wrong at all. But we do have the final lines that have been released as we're now 10 minutes from puck drop for the Senators. So forward core, kind of what we expected. We've got Tim Stützle between Drake Batherson and Claude Giroux. Mm-hmm. Dylan Cousins between Ridley Gregg and Brady Tkachuk.
Right.
Shane Pinto is between Nick Cousins and Michael Amadio. Lars Eller between Warren Fogle and Fabian Zetterlund. Bit of a changeup on the back end, lower down. So Sanderson, Zub to be expected. Spence with Shabbat. And then Lassie Thompson is coming out. We've got Dennis Gilbert drawing into the lineup alongside Nicholas Matten-Paolo. Of course, Linus Allmark starting in goal.
Yeah, that's interesting. A little bit more experience, right, with Dennis Gilbert. Not the same type of player that Lassie Thompson is. A little bit more kind of steady in his own end. I worry a little bit with I mean, he's got more experience, but at the same time, I still worry a little bit about him getting grounded in his own end. But I guess that's a worry no matter what. You play Carolina and your third pair, whoever the third pair is, they're going to go after. You know that they're going to go after the third pair. Ottawa's got to be very careful about not icing the puck with that line on the ice. That's another key. Do not get caught with a fresh first or second line for Carolina coming over the boards, and that pairs out. That's big trouble. So they got to stay away from that. But I do like the fact that Spence and Shabbat, I don't think you're going to see that third pair all that much.
I don't think so. And I think Travis Green also mentioning today that he does expect Tyler Clevin to be available in this series. So be fascinating to see when he can draw into the lineup. Wonder about maybe game 3 or game 4 when they're back in Ottawa. But
that's great news.
Yeah, very good news. He is wearing the jaw protector on his mask, not the full fishbowl, the one that's got the separated part. So
yeah,
jaw injury is what we think. I do want to mention just the Carolina Hurricanes lines real quick because I think it's a super deep lineup. Not sure people realize how good they are, but first line, you've got Sebastian Aho between Andrei Svechnikov and Seth Jarvis.
Wow, that's a hell of a first line.
Very much so. Your second line is Logan Stankoven between Taylor Hall and Jackson Blake. Quite the third line here. Jordan Stahl is centering Nikolai Ehlers and Jordan Martinook.
Yeah, I mean that is this. That's Pinto and Amadio and Cousins for now, and maybe somebody else goes on that. That is that line for Carolina.
That's a very elite third line, and they do say that third lines often win you Stanley Cup. So
yeah,
certainly something to watch there. Fourth line, Mark Jankowski is between William Carrier and Eric Robinson.
Okay, I mean not William Carrier. I think people know a little bit more about. I don't know about the other two, but we're about to find out.
Yep. And then the back end here is very deep. I really like the Carolina Hurricanes decor. So your first pair, you've got Jacob Slavin with Jalen Chatfield. Second pair is Keandre Miller with Sean Walker. And then a third pair. This might be one of the best third pairs in the playoffs. Alexander Nikishin, who I think is a very impressive rookie, alongside Shane Gostisbehere.
Yeah, Ethan says he finds Carolina top heavy personally. They're no more deep than Ottawa when you really think about it. I really thought about it, and I disagree with that.
Agreed. I think Ottawa, the only area I think you could probably beat Carolina in, I'd say, is the fourth line. When you look at having Fogle down there and Zetterlund with Eller, I like them more than Carrier, Jankowski, and Robinson. Just about every other matchup, I like the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that Ottawa's not close, Ethan. It's not like Carolina's way better than Ottawa in a lot of areas, but as Tanner points out, they're really deep. I mean, that third pair alone is so much better than Ottawa's third pair. It's crazy. Right? Like that's not even comparable to Nick Matten-Paolo and Dennis Gilbert.
Yeah.
However, Ben says, I would argue, but then didn't say anything else.
He's asking, is that former Calgary Flames first round draft pick Mark Jankowski? It is. 2012 Calgary 21st overall pick.
It's a long time ago.
The pride of Hamilton, Ontario.
Oh, there you go.
How about it? There's this point. Carolina won. First and third are better, but Ottawa's second and fourth. I could hear you out on that.
But just let me interject. That doesn't make it equal. If your first and third lines are better, that's an advantage over the second and fourth line. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
If your first line is better than Ottawa's first, and your third line, which really is going to play probably as much or more than any other line, it's really your top two lines. If those, because I think we can both agree that the Pinto Amadio line probably plays as much or more than Ottawa's second line. We call them that, but that's not what they actually are. They're defensive minded players that are out there in all sorts of different positions. And so I know what you're saying, Ben, but I kind of like when you read those lines out, I have more faith in both of the lines that you would call the third lines. And if you're saying that you think the first line for Carolina is better and that the Jordan Staal line is better, that is their top two lines. And if the top two lines are better than Ottawa's top two lines, there is an advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're getting close here. What do you think? Like, what's something that you're keying in on? And what do you think happens in game number 1?
I mean, the goaltending for sure is what I'm going to be keyed on, I think, for both teams to see who can get out and look better between Anderson and Allmark. Beyond that, I'm just looking for the Senators to play a little bit more like an experienced playoff team than we saw last season, because the Carolina Hurricanes will. And I think it's going to be a tough one here. I don't like calling a game 1 winner just in a series because we haven't seen these two really go at each other. I feel like the safe pick would probably be to go Carolina. But it's so hard to know before we see these two teams go at it at least once.
Yep. Totally agree with that. I mean, predicting things like this is very hard. That's why we don't ask Zach to do that a lot. That was a needless shot. Sorry, Zach. But same here. Like, I think the biggest thing for me is that Ottawa doesn't get overwhelmed if something bad happens. Or like not even bad, but just you can play well and a goal goes in and you're down. Just don't change and don't get overwhelmed by the moments. And I think they're going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be intimidated going into Carolina here for game number 1, just because Carolina's won, 7 years in a row in the first round?
Yes.
That's a crazy stat too. 7 years. And they've never made the Stanley Cup during that time.
Nope. Only team in the big 4 professional sports leagues.
Wow.
To do that in 7 years.
Yeah. So yeah, a ton of focus on Linus Ullmark for me. And I want to see Brady Tkachuk be a difference maker. Like he had some points. I wouldn't call him a massive difference maker down the stretch. Tim Stützle was better. The Pinto Amadio line was better. Jake Sanderson came in. So I want to see Brady Tkachuk be the Brady Tkachuk that everyone talks about and that they think that he is. I want to actually see that on the ice. So those are the two things for me from an Ottawa perspective, that if both of those things are clicking, where you watch Linus Ullmark in goal and go, you know what? He looks good. Like he's top of his crease. He looks good. He doesn't look shaky. And then Brady Tkachuk's out there kind of dominating. That's exciting. I don't mind Ottawa in this game. I think I don't think they're going to be intimidated. But I know that after the game that you and I, and hopefully everyone watching right now, listening, will be with us. This is overtime to talk all about it. Game 1 of the NHL playoffs. You mentioned that there are 3 games. Minnesota and Dallas begins at 5:30, and then Philadelphia, Pittsburgh at 8:00 tonight.
Let's go.
Yeah, before 4 more get underway tomorrow. 3, 5:45, 7:30, and 10:00. We'll talk about those later. But it's time. Game number 1. The Ottawa Senators in Carolina to face the Hurricanes. Tanner, can't wait. Thanks to everybody for being a part of this. Even you, Ethan. We appreciate it. Yeah, we'll reconvene. This is overtime right after the game, no matter what happens.
Fired up. Let's go.
Yeah, it should be fun. Enjoy the game, everybody, and we will be back right here after the game on OSN.